So I titled my presentation is 5 Things to Consider. I want to get through this very quickly. First of all, we're going to have a lame duck session in Congress. They didn't finish their spending bills, so they need to come back for that. But that provides us an opportunity to push for some things, unfinished things on our agenda. One being multi-employer pension reform. We've been working very closely with the building trades to basically get the second part of legislation that we passed 2 years ago that allowed troubled multi-employer pension plans to temporarily reduce benefits in order to improve the plan's solvency. The second part of the legislation, which we didn't get enacted, is to allow for a new type of hybrid or composite plan that multi-employer plans can adopt that has elements of both a defined benefit and a defined contribution plan. Beauty of this is that it would allow 2 things to happen. One, to improve the solvency of the plan and guarantee pension benefits to retirees, and secondly, reduce the employer's withdrawal liability. Secondly, Water Resources Development Act. This traditionally funds locks, dams, ports, but recently has also become a vehicle for the revolving loan program, which funds safe drinking water and clean water sewage projects. So this passed the Senate overwhelmingly, and we're looking to get this passed in the House as well. A third thing dealing with our workforce agenda is the Perkins Act, which governs apprenticeship and training programs. This passed the House with over 400 votes. We're looking for an opportunity to get this done in the Senate as well. One of the biggest issues here is this has a lot more emphasis on career and technical education. AGC, along with other business groups, we continue to make the case in Congress and with the administration that we need to change the education culture somewhat. Every kid doesn't go to college and get a 4-year degree. There are plenty of in-demand jobs like construction where students can graduate from high school and have a nice middle-class life without needing a 4-year college degree and the debt that goes along with it. Second thing, and this is a bit of irony, and I kind of enjoy telling AGC audiences about this. Conservatives are actually aiding the Obama agenda. And back in the 1990s, when Bill Clinton was president and we had a Republican Congress, we were successful in getting what are known as appropriations riders on spending bills, which is basically language that says no funds can be used to do X. And X in those days was bad regulations that the business community didn't like, and you were able to stop the regulatory activities of the administration. So we were successful back in the 90s doing that. We've tried to employ the same strategy today. The problem is you have about 40 members of the conservatives, the House Freedom Caucus, that came to Washington with 2 objectives. One, I'm not going to vote for any more spending, and secondly, I'm going to do everything I can to stop President Obama in his tracks. Well, they're accomplishing half of that. We've been trying to get riders on these issues, and the silica rule and the blacklisting rule I'll talk about in a little bit more detail. But the point of the matter is what happens is when you have 40 or so Republicans that tell their leadership, we don't care what's in these spending bills, we're not going to vote for them. When it's time for the bill to come to the floor and the Republican leaders need to go get Democratic votes to pass appropriations bills, which is something Congress has to do, what do you think the Democrats asked for first? Get rid of these riders. So the very people that said we're going to stop President Obama, you send me to Washington, I'm going to stop President Obama, are actually helping him out. Go figure. So that sets up the third point, and that is the last resort on a lot of these issues is the courts. When the administration overreaches, can you go to the courts and seek relief? 2 big issues where we're doing that. First is the OSHA silica rule. The OSHA silica rule requires engineering controls, mandatory health monitoring for anybody exposed to silica. But most disturbingly, it also sets a new standard for silica exposure that's not technically feasible for somebody to guard against. unless your employees wear a respirator the entire time that there is silica in the air. So we, along with other groups, we formed a construction-specific coalition on this. We're in federal court, U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals. They're starting to plan the briefing schedule now. We're trying to stop the administration there. Second big one is the so-called blacklisting rule, or the Fair Pay and Safe Workplaces rule. This only covers federal contractors for now. But basically, this requires any federal contractor, when you submit a bid, and it goes into effect on October 25th. When you submit a bid, you have to list any violation of 17 different federal labor and employment rules and corresponding state equivalents. So Davis-Bacon, EEO, OSHA, National Labor Relations Act, Fair Labor Standards Act. Any violation of any of these laws, you have to submit in your bid. And you also have to collect all violations from any subcontractors. Well, you can imagine what the burden is going to be on a major project. The other problem with this is that this adds a layer of subjectivity to what should be an objective process, in that you'll have a labor advisor who will sit next to the contracting officer and determine whether any of your violations have risen to a level that would make you not be a responsible bidder. And then there's also the possibility, and this is not really all that clear in the regulations, there's 900 some pages to these regulations, and there's 130 different references to labor compliance agreements, which essentially will allow these regulatory agencies, National Labor Relations Board or OSHA, Wage and Hour Division at the Department of Labor, to force somebody who's got violations to sign a labor compliance agreement, which basically will govern how you act in the future. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce has been a reliable ally on this. They have supported a gas tax increase. It's the only tax increase the U.S. Chamber of Commerce supports. But recently, the National Association of Manufacturers came out with a major infrastructure proposal where they've looked at all of the different modes of infrastructure, and they have their plan on additional investments and how we pay for them. We think this is significant. We've been pushing the general business community for years to get involved in this fight. We basically have in the past gotten lip service where they'll just sign a letter saying, yeah, we support more investment. But to have them out front, it's important to have these additional voices out there. It's no surprise when the construction industry says we need more money for infrastructure. It is significant when major users of our infrastructure are out there saying we need to make these investments. One challenge that I think we'll continue to have moving forward is, I call it the stimulus hangover. You talk to anybody about, you say, I work for the construction industry. Well, your folks did really well in the stimulus, didn't they? No. Everybody thinks $800 billion in the stimulus went to building roads and bridges. We know that it's not exactly true. So we have to, and we didn't see significant improvements in the economy, did we, when that money went out there? So we have to do a better job of telling that story moving forward. And then finally, the election. It looks like Hillary Clinton's going to win. Donald Trump's unfavorability rating right now is 61%. The Republicans missed the layup. I mean, this was a terrific opportunity based upon who the Democratic nominee is for the Republicans to win the White House. They nominated somebody who's not a Republican and is probably not going to get above 42%. I think the House is going to stay in Republican control, but they'll lose about 10 seats, which only will embolden the Freedom Caucus, the conservatives that vote no on everything. So that's going to make Paul Ryan's job a lot more difficult. The Senate, it's difficult to predict right now. It's positive. It's a positive playing field for the Democrats. If Hillary Clinton wins, they only need a net gain of 4 seats. 7 of the seats that are up this year that are held by Republicans are in states that Obama won twice. So they need 4. Kane would break the tie. And one interesting plausible scenario is that you could have a 50-50 split. Kane breaks the tie. He's from Virginia. The Democratic governor of Virginia will appoint a Democrat to fill his seat. But in November, Virginia will have a statewide gubernatorial election, which would also have the Senate seat on the ballot. Non-presidential year, better opportunity for Republicans. So you could have a scenario where the Democrats only will hold the majority in the Senate for about 10 months. The one positive for Republicans in the Senate races are many of their Republican incumbents are running ahead of Trump in their states, New Hampshire, Pennsylvania, Iowa, places like that, Florida. So that's good news for the Republicans. I think one positive thing to look at is if Clinton wins and there is a Republican House, there's a Democratic slight majority, is unlike Obama, I think Hillary Clinton will actually try to work with Congress. Obama demonstrated contempt for members of Congress, and that was the Democrats. He ignored the Republicans and showed contempt for the Democrats. So I think Hillary Clinton may try to work with, she had a good record of that in the Senate, may try to work with Republicans to actually get some big things done. We can only hope. The only other issue is that the regulatory juggernaut or onslaught that we call it that occurred under President Obama will only continue with President Clinton. So we'll have that to deal with for the next 4 years.